I was born in Liverpool, and my grandmother ran a confectioner's tobacconist shop. Now, in her spare time, she had myself and my sister, and she taught me how to embroider, and I must have been about 4 years old at that time. Then my father remarried, and we moved up to Aberdeen. By the time I was 12, I'd been given a rather nice bolt of Harris tweed fabric, and I decided, in my wisdom, that I would make a coat. So I made this Harris tweed coat, which was rather successful, and I say so myself, and it went on from there. Now, I went to school in Scotland, and at the time I left school at 14 and a half. My birthday was in October, and I would have been 15 in the October. So I was lucky enough to get a job in a mill. Horrible thought, a mill, you know, all these people going in at a certain time in the morning and finishing at a certain time of the day. The noise was astronomical, especially in the weaving sheds. A friend of ours used to work at Granham Mill, they produce cloth for J&J Crombie. And I started at Granham as an invisible mender. Now, what this entailed was, after the cloth was woven, it was brought into what they called the inspector mill, which was a very vast open mill, and they had some rollers attached to the ceiling, and you'd put the bolt of material on the floor, throw it over the rollers and stand in the middle of it, and by doing this you could see all of the threads that were missing. So whether it was a pick up 2, drop 2, pick up 2, drop 2, or something more complicated, this is how the invisible mending was done. And it was done in such a way that once it had gone into what they call burling, they used teasels to bring up the nap of the material. You couldn't see where any of the threads were missing. If any threads were missing, then it was brought back and you replaced them. Within 6 months of being there, by the time I was just over 15, I was earning more in my pay packet than my dad was, because I did what they called piecework. The majority were women. Women have quicker fingers, they're very nimble. Mostly the men were the overseers, but practically the whole mill was run, I would say 92% of the mill was run by women. You're talking about 300, 400, 500 women. Well, they used to do a very, very nice, what they called a camel coat. It wasn't actually camel hair, but the colour is camel. And that was one of their best sellers. They were always sent down to places like Harrods, and then the top-ranking officers' coats, whether it was navy blue for the Navy, Air Force blue for the Air Force, or khaki for the Army, all the material was produced there as well. Extremely high quality, very enviable. If you had a piece of Granham material and you made yourself a skirt or a jacket or whatever out of it, then you were really very smart. It was mostly happy but boring, and I decided by the time I was sort of coming up for 17 that this wasn't really the life for me. I had other interests. So I went and I had 3.5 wonderful years in the RAF and thoroughly enjoyed it. I still kept my hand in sewing. I made my wedding dress, I made my bridesmaid's dress. My wedding dress was white Duchess satin with a plain long A-lined shape with bell sleeves, no ornamentation on it at all, because I had a hat which had lots of flowers in it, and the veil stuck into the hat, and it was 6 foot long. So I thought that the veil was fancy enough without having to embellish the dress. I got married on the 20th of July 1969. So I've been married 45 years to the same man. I haven't killed him yet.